Welcome to the Women2Win Spotlight of the Week. This week's spotlight is on Andrea Leadsom, the MP for South Northamptonshire. Andrea was elected in 2010, currently serves as the Leader of the House of Commons and has held several positions including the Secretary of State at DEFRA and has sat on the Treasury Select Committee. Before entering politics, Andrea worked in finance. Enjoy the video. When did you first decide to become an MP? What was your political journey like?
Well, I guess it was when I was 13, and at the time it was still a very tense period between the USSR and the United States of America, who were still pointing nuclear weapons at each other, and there was a real threat. And my two sisters and I used to practice making nuclear shelters. But very seriously, as a young teenager, it really used to frighten me, and so I decided then that I was going to become a Member of Parliament and save the world from a nuclear war. And I'm very pleased to say that it's worked so far.
Yes, aren't we all? But you went into finance first, so yeah. What was it that made you decide to put off becoming an MP for a while?
So I was raised by my mother, who was a very strong Conservative, and my stepfather, who is a very old school Labour supporter, and they had a furniture shop. And they worked all hours. I mean, it's a typical story for many. And of course, they were working so very, very hard to pay taxes. The super tax on the self-employed, when I was a young teenager, was around 98%. People can't believe that these days. But it made my parents pretty livid, coming from opposite ends of the political spectrum as they did. And they really fought a campaign to get taxes down. And so I guess as well as being interested in politics, I was also interested in how economies work. And so for me, I studied political science at university and then decided I wanted to understand finance. And I think also coming from a broken home, which at the time wasn't very often found, it was quite unusual when I was a kid to have divorced parents, and so there was an element of wanting to be financially secure, and the city was a good place to go, but I was fascinated by it, so I thought, well, I'll have a few years in finance before I go and become a politician, and I ended up staying in the city for 25 years. So it's been a really long journey, but I would say, right from 2001, so 9 years before I became an MP, I was really focused on getting that seat.
And you talk about being focused. What was it you did? What did you do to make that journey happen?
So I applied for lots of seats. I think in total about 160 applications.
Wow.
But essentially, you had 3 rounds of interviews, and quite often, if I didn't get an interview at all, it was just straight back to the drawing board. But often, I think 17 times I got a first interview. 11 times I got a first and a second interview, and 5 times I got a third interview, and twice I was the winner. Once in Knowsley South up in Liverpool, which is the second safest Labour seat in England, and then once in South Northamptonshire, which I was selected for in 2006 and won in 2010.
So quite a lot of applications there then. And at any point did you just think maybe it wasn't right for you, or you tried and maybe it was time to stop?
I think the one time I questioned it was 2003 when my youngest child was born, and I'd applied for Reading West, and I was 38 weeks pregnant at the first round interview. 39 weeks pregnant for the second round interview, which you'll recognise is overdue, and I actually gave birth the morning of the final, and so my daughter was born at 2:30 in the morning, and I went to the final at 7:30 that evening. Wow. I think they all thought I was completely mad, and for a few days afterwards, yes, I think I thought I was mad too, and I didn't win, and I'm so glad I didn't in hindsight.
And what would your advice be to women who are looking to stand, particularly those like yourselves who have done a different career first?
So I would say you have to really want to do it. I mean, my own story, I think, demonstrates I really, really wanted to do it. I think, I've been told time and again, if you stick with it, you'll get there. But of course, for many people, they just can't quite bring themselves to go that extra mile. It's a lot of work. You have to really want to do it. But it's incredibly rewarding. You know, you really do have a magic wand. For some people, you can really change their life for the better as an MP. And it's the greatest privilege. So I really encourage any woman who is thinking about taking this up. You really need to want to do it. But at the same time, if you do, you'll love it. You won't regret it. It's incredibly rewarding.